In today's video, we're going to discuss the single most important concept in chess, which is piece development. Why it is more important than anything else, why people tend to ignore it, and how you can use this principle to get better at chess faster. Enjoy the video. Okay, let's start this video off by discussing what the objective of the game is. So whenever you play chess, your objective is to checkmate the enemy king. That means that the king safety is always going to be number one in any game. However, experienced players can generally keep the king very safe because they will develop with moves like e4, knight f3, bishop e2, castle. Black will also castle in a couple of moves, and both sides will generally keep their kings very safe. So the battle will be fought over the second most important thing in chess, which is the piece activity. The activity of your pieces is everything in chess. That is where the battle is fought. And think about it like this, right? If you are able to put pieces of your army in correct spots, pressuring and attacking correct places, and your opponent's army or your enemy's army is not prepared for it, you're always going to be able to defeat that army. And that's a very general thing to think about, but it makes a lot of sense. If your army is prepared and your opponent's army is not prepared, your army is going to beat their army. You know, it's a very simple concept. And let me show you how it works the exact same way in chess. So I started this game off by playing e4, opponent goes e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and I go d4. Opponent captures and I go bishop to c4. This is called the Scotch Gambit. There are many traps here and many lines that win very quickly. However, this is not necessarily I wouldn't call this a very trappy opening, even though there are traps. If your opponent does not fall into those traps, you still have a very decent position. So it's not your typical trappy opening where you sacrifice some positional advantage in order to trick your opponent. You still have a very decent position to fall back on. So in this position, opponent plays bishop to e7. I continue developing with castles. He goes d6 and I just capture the pawn back on d4. And here my opponent starts to break opening principles. He goes knight to e5, attacking my bishop on e2. You don't necessarily want to be moving the same piece multiple times in an opening. I just drop my bishop back. Of course, I have to respond to this threat because the bishop is hanging. I drop the bishop back, and even though this at first glance looks like a tempo winning move, it's actually not, and it actually loses time because that will just help me develop. Once I go f4, this knight is going to be kicked away, and f4 is a very nice move. That's why my opponent here played knight to g6. He played this move willingly even before I played f4. So in this position, I played knight to c3. Another alternative move that I was thinking about was c4, and actually the computer is sort of on the fence. It cannot decide whether c4 or knight c3 is better. I thought knight c3 was more in the theme of the position since it was a Scotch Gambit and you want to develop very quickly whenever you're playing gambits. So I thought this was more in the theme of the position. So here my opponent goes c6 and I play this move bishop to e3. It is an inaccuracy according to the computer, but it is still a very nice developing move. It's not a bad move by any means. I'm just trying to get my bishop out, get my queen out, get my rook out. That's the idea. Computer wanted f4 right away and then doing something else. So I went bishop to e3. My opponent went bishop to f6 and I go queen to d2. It's a bit of a mysterious move to me, this bishop to f6. I don't quite understand. And then my opponent went knight to e7. There might have been something he did not like about knight f6. That's why he went bishop f6, or he just wanted the bishop to be on this diagonal. But that's what he chose to do. And here I just went f4 finally. Now the reason why I went f4 here is because I thought that if I go rook d1 right away, there might be potential d5s, and I don't know if this works or doesn't work. I didn't want to take and I cannot push here, so that's why I didn't go rook d1. But if I went f4 and he went d5, okay, now I have e5 and this bishop is trapped. So that's why I played f4 here in view of d5. and here my opponent castles, and now I go rook to d1, building up pressure on d6. And what I want you to notice about this position is that I didn't do anything special. The only thing I did was just simply bring my pieces out. And if I go back, and let me just show you my last couple of moves, right? So first of all, the opening was Scotch Gambit. I took the pawn in the middle, took my pawn back, which I gambited earlier. And then from this point on, I developed a piece, I developed another piece, I developed another piece. I went f4 to stop this d5 move, and then I developed another piece. Every single move that I make is a developing move. Even f4, this is also a developing move. You can argue that it develops this rook because at any point I can go e5 and then open up this rook, and now the rook is on a semi-open file. It is very active. So even f4, I would consider this as a developing move. The only thing I'm doing here is just developing my pieces. I'm not doing anything special, and my position all of a sudden is plus 1.3, and it's going to get better and better. And here queen to c7 was played to continue developing, and I just played g4. And the threat of g4 is, there are actually multiple threats. I'm either threatening g5 or f5. Now in the game I didn't have enough time to calculate because my opponent willingly took on d4, but what I was thinking was, let's say rook to d8 is played, I was gonna go f5 and then g5, trapping this bishop. So this is something that can easily happen. Or if this goes back, I still go g5 and we get into a position like this where it is very uncomfortable for my opponent. Perhaps I go knight to f3, going after this bishop. Also there's a pin, opponent has to be very careful, and this would just be a very dominant position for me because my opponent just can't develop. I developed quickly, I started pushing my pawns, and now because my army was ready, my opponent could not do anything to stop me because I just pushed the pawns, and now I'm just pushing back. Every single one of my pieces are playing, but he is unable to play because he wasted time in the opening and his army was not prepared for the assault. So going back, let me just go back to this position right here, what actually happened in the game. My opponent took on d4, I took back. I'm not sure whether taking with the queen or with the bishop is better. Computer likes taking with the bishop. I chose to take with the queen because I wanted this pressure on d6, and here my opponent tilted. There's no other way to put it because he played b6. And b6 is obviously a blunder because he loses d6 and then he's gonna lose more things in the future. But the thing about this position is it's already horrible. Like there's nothing you can do here. Rook d8 is what I was expecting, of course, to defend this pawn. My idea here was to play f5 and then go bishop to f4. This is what I wanted to do. Now this is a very high level positional idea because at first glance it weakens this square, but I immediately go after this, so it's actually fine, and I'm immediately gonna take and then take here if I can, and this is a better position for me. Like if f6 is played here, I can even take, and this is a better position. I can go g5. There are many things I can do. I also don't have to rush with f5 if I don't want to. However, my opponent tilted here and I ended up winning very easily. And what I want you to notice is that I didn't do anything special. The game ended after f5. My opponent actually stalled out the clock after I played f5 because the knight has to be either lost or it has to go to h4 where it's still lost, queen g3, or it has to go to this very miserable square on h8. So this is just a horrible position for black. There's nothing he can do. And I didn't do anything special. I did not do anything spectacular in this game. I didn't sacrifice anything. I didn't do any magical things positionally. All I did, let me just go back. All I did was develop my pieces and I got a better position because my opponent broke one opening principle. He moved his pieces multiple times in an opening. He moved the knight multiple times. He moved the bishop multiple times. And I was able to punish that by simply developing and then going for an attack, and my opponent's army was unable to deal with my army because of how much time he wasted. And these sorts of things happen even at the 23-2400 level, and this is, in my opinion, the most important concept in all of chess. It's all about piece activity, and it's all about getting your pieces out faster than your opponent. The goal of every opening in chess is exactly the same. Get the pieces out as quickly as possible, get the king to safety, whether that's castled queenside, kingside, center, doesn't matter. Get the pieces out, keep the king safe, and beat your opponent with better piece activity, or at least attempt to do that. Every single opening has exactly the same goal. The difficulty from chess comes from the fact that every structure is different and how you get the pieces out is different in every single structure, position, etc. But the goal is always the same. It's always about bringing the pieces out as fast as possible. And it can be as simple as moves like bishop to e2. So for example, if I were to go back here in this position, the bishop is on e2. Does that mean the bishop is passive? Not necessarily, because this bishop on e2 is still helping out. It's still controlling squares over here. And even though it's not doing anything right away, it is going to be very good in the future. For example, if the bishop was not on e2, I would not be able to play this move g4. And this just goes to show you, even though some pieces may look passive, they're not really that passive. They still allow you to develop, because the bishop, if it was on f1, the rooks would not be connected, but the bishop on e2, it's on the second rank, rooks are connected, the queen is out of the way, and it is still a very decent piece. And the reason why I'm focusing on the e2 bishop specifically is because some people don't like to put the bishop on e2. They prefer the bishop on c4 or d3, where it has more clear targets, but it's still good on e2. It is still developed. And oftentimes when you are in open positions, just simply developing your pieces matters more than developing them to perfect squares. For example, in this position, I would never play this move bishop to c4. Even though you could maybe argue that c4 is a more active square than e2, it loses time, right? You are not really advancing. You're moving the same piece multiple times. You don't want to do that. You just want to start attacking with your pawns in this case. Getting your pieces out as quickly as possible matters more than putting them on perfect squares, or what looks like perfect squares at first glance. So I hope this video will demonstrate how important piece activity is in chess, why you should just simply develop, and you really shouldn't overcomplicate matters with moves like a3, a4, stuff like that. Just develop, and you will get a better position than your opponents, especially if you're playing with the white pieces. Since white gets to move first, you are always going to be slightly ahead in development. So I hope you learned something from this video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.